Okay, so today we're going to be painting this Overlord, and I've already taken the liberty and priming him with a glossy black primer. The first color we're going to use is Color Shifter's Green Tin, and we're going to mix it into a shot glass with a couple drops of airbrush. Mix it up real nice. And into the airbrush it goes. Now this is a Avadon HSBS, I believe. And here we go. Now I'm going to test it to make sure that the pressure is good, which is at currently 25 psi. And I'm going to go over the entire model and give it a nice base coat. Okay, so the next paint is Blayo's Color Shifter's Violet Teal from the Galaxy Dust range. And again, I'm going to add 1 to 2 drops of airbrush thinner and mix it up, and into the airbrush it goes. Now, when I'm doing this color, I'm actually only trying to hit the upper top edges of the model, just like a zenithal highlight. I'm trying to look at the areas where the light will catch on the model. Now here I'm actually just using the air from the airbrush to dry off the paint and putting the rest of the paint back into the bottle. Now I'm using Army Painter Shining Silver, and I'm only paying attention to the upper raised areas, the very edges, for an edge highlight. Now the Avadon is actually very fine point detail, can actually do this without it overspraying onto other parts of the model. I'm using the silver to paint all the metal parts of the model, just paying very careful attention to where I place the paint, and I'm going to be going over that later with a known black wash. This next color is Mephiston Red base paint, and we're going to grab another shot glass. We're going to get a little bit of paint in there, add 1 to 2 drops of airbrush thinner, and mix it up, and into the airbrush it goes. Now, I'm using a piece of paper to block off the rest of the model so that way I can limit any overspray from the red. I'm paying attention to just the blade of his weapon. Now, I'm just trying to give a nice solid base coat of this color and just letting the layers build up on themselves. This next color is Evil Sun's Scarlet. I'm going to essentially just mix this into the previous Mephiston Red mix that I have to give just a brighter red. And here I'm using the mix and testing it on a piece of paper. You always want to make sure you test it first. Now I'm using this on just the edge of the weapon, being very careful on where I should lay the paint. Just lightly feather it onto the edge, and you can see the magic happen. I'm being very careful and just adding a little bit of a red glow to the tachyon arrow. For the next color, we're going to be using Fire Dragon Bright as the next highlight. Again, I'm using a clean shot glass, adding airbrush thinner, and into the airbrush it goes. Now I'm trying to be very light with this next layer, but I'm also kind of noticing it's a little thin, and because it's thin, it's super transparent. So I'm going to have to go over this multiple times and having to wait for it to dry in between applications. Okay, so the next color is Muriel Yellow, and I'm just going to follow the exact same steps that I did before, putting into the shot glass, adding a little bit of thinner, and into the airbrush it goes. Now this layer is actually a lot easier because I left the mix just a little bit thicker than I did on the orange, so I was able to cover more of the model easier. Paying special attention to the extreme edge of the model is pretty critical at this point because you want to give it a nice glowing effect, but you also want to leave the darker red from the opposite side showing as well. Here I'm using Army Painter Plate Mail color, and I'm going to use this via brush to just touch up some areas where there was a little bit of overspray, and just kind of go through and make it quick. Next, I'm going to use Retribution Gold and just add a little bit of water via brush, and I'm going to touch up some areas of detail on the model where I want to paint gold, like the hanging bits of jewelry as well as his chest collar thing that he has on. Next color is Avadon Black, and I'm going to heavily dilute this. And I'm going to use this as a fill-in for the vents on his chest. Next, I'm going to use contrast color Guilliman's Flesh, and I'm going to paint this a nice thick coat all over all of the gold. And it's going to give it a really nice weathered look to the gold. Next, I'm going to use Nuln Oil, and I'm going to go over all of the silver areas to give it some good shading and to bring down the brightness of the metal. Next up is I'm going to go back with some Evil Sunz Scarlet. And I'm going to heavily dilute it. I'm going to use a very sharp point paintbrush, and I'm going to pretty much do like a pin wash into the little glyphs, I guess you would call them, to kind of mark out some of the detail. I'm also going to touch the eye area, the sunken area of the eyes. I know it's still pretty diluted, so I'm not really focusing. The eyes kind of stick out a little bit, so there's a recessed area around it. And I'm going to use a little bit of Muriel Yellow to just literally pick out the part of the eye that sticks out, and it gives it a kind of a really nice glowing eye look to it. Coming back with some Retribution Gold, and I'm going to touch up a few of the areas, adding kind of a highlight. And I'm just doing an edge highlight around the edges. Now I'm going to go back to the Shining Silver from Army Painter, and again I'm just going to use a little tiny bit just to catch a few edges, just to make it look like the light is glinting off of his tabard, I guess. Next, I'm using black gray from Vallejo, and I'm using it to paint the base rock that he's standing on. It's just more of a fill-in color for the moment. Now I forgot part of the base of the staff, and I'm just going over it with some Retribution Gold, and I'm going to later on do the exact same steps that I did for the other color on the body. Give it a wash of the Element's Flesh, and then re-highlight it with Now I'm going to use Games Workshop's texture paint, Armageddon Dust, and I'm using a popsicle stick here to kind of get some out, and I noticed mine was a little dry, so I had to switch to a different one. I'm going to put a nice little glob on there, and I'm going to use a kind of a throwaway brush that I have, and I'm going to use that to push it around. Now once I'm finished with this, I'm going to put it to the side to dry, and we'll come back when it's done. Alright, it's been a little bit and it's now dry. So now I'm going to go with Agrax Earthshade Wash, and I'm just going to give the entire area a real quick wash. Now that it's all washed, we're going to set this to the side and let it dry, and we'll be right back. Alright, now I grabbed a small dry brush, and I found some Morghast Bone base paint, and I'm going to get just a little bit of the paint onto the brush, wipe most of it off, and I'm going to lightly drag it across where the floor is, essentially, and just gonna let the paint catch on the rough edges, and it's gonna give a real nice effect. And here is the finished model. Again, it's been a blast, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching my videos, liking, subscribing if you can, share it around. I'm still pretty new and budding, but hey, I'll take what I can get. Thanks, everyone.